the predecessor to Dark Souls. It's the first one, really.
Mhm.
But not everybody, first of all, likes that kind of game, and we need to remember that in our like community, let's say probably the average player that we interact with or read from or hear from is probably more hardcore than the average player in general, right?
Mm.
Because we like if we hear about it from Reddit, or if we hear about it on our podcast or whatever, the average player sits down, plays for an hour, and then does something else, right? Are they going to pick up a PS5 to get Demon Souls? Probably not. I think the majority of people will pick up a PS5 because it's a PS5, and then it's a big plus if there is a new title that sounds fun and amazing to play. But you get like an extra little, I want to say a niche segment, because you have Demon Souls as a remake, right? And I'm one of those people that's excited about it, but I'm not going to pretend that that's a really big game.
So are you gonna buy the
It
PS5?
just doesn't. Yeah, we're going to get one.
Oh,
I don't know when exactly we're able to get one, but we will get one.
Christmas present. You know, I believe In Bruges actually runs on the PS5 very well.
Oh,
It's
nice.
very crisp with all the beautiful hardware that's inside that machine.
Okay, you know what?
So
I will get a PS5 on the spot. I will do everything I can to get a PS5 if it comes with In Bruges the game as one of the flagship titles. I will
oh
I will get it
boy,
right away.
oh boy.
Right away, man.
So there were some tweets that I saw. In fact, one of them was from the official Xbox account on Twitter saying, "We can't believe we have to say this. This is just me summarizing. We can't believe we have to say this, but please do not blow vape smoke into your Xbox Series X." And apparently, you can balance a ping pong ball on the Xbox. Isn't that incredible? That's pretty
Incredible.
cool. That's pretty cool. I like that feature that they've added. That makes me want to buy it a little bit more, despite the
I
name
love
being
that they
horrendous.
tweeted that actually. I love that they did that. Like, did they have to do that? Like, actually, really?
No,
Did they
of
have
course
to do
not.
that?
But it's funny, of course.
That's funny. Yeah.
So I guess we're just gonna have to wait. Like this is the interesting thing. There's a couple things. First, it just feels lackluster because I remember back in the day when these consoles would come out, it would be huge news. People would be literally. I mean, I know the Corona's happening. Even if it wasn't, I don't think it'd be much different. People would be lining up. I remember waiting for overnight for several consoles. Like it's very exciting stuff. But now we can't even rate that one console versus another because most of the games are the same. They're both basically, again, I know there's some differences, but basically the same hardware for the most part. The biggest difference and selling point for me is still the Xbox games being able to be played on PC. That's huge.
Hmm.
That's like beyond huge.
But we can
Um,
also rate them on name. And on name,
yeah.
I think PlayStation really takes the cake with its innovation of upping the number by one, which is
Yes.
infinitely better than what the competitor did.
Yeah.
If you if you win with that, the other team real fucked up.
I agree. I could not agree more. Plus one is greater than sex, apparently,
Oh, yes.
or at least in that context. Okay, next thing. This is really interesting. So there was a channel. I don't even know how to pronounce this. Unis
Unus Annus.
Honest. It looks like anus with two N's, but it's Unis Honest.
Its
It
Latin
had.
and means 1 year.
Oh, okay, that's perfect then. So Markiplier and Crank Gameplays were the two individuals behind this channel. Had 1.8 million subscribers. They'd post a video every single day, and they told everybody from the beginning, in 1 year, this channel will be deleted. So they essentially had a live YouTube countdown of the deletion where 1.5 million people were watching live. That is fucking
It was
crazy.
really big.
Huge. Has
So my girlfriend was one of them.
Okay.
We've
Yeah,
watched
give me the
quite a
insight.
lot of their videos together, actually, of this channel. It's, I think, really unfortunately for them, they got really screwed by Corona, because the channel was actually. So when did Corona happen? It started happening like big time 8 months ago, I would say. In March is when most countries started like having limitations to what you could do, right?
Yep.
So it's actually 8 months ago. Um, but they would do really cool content, like and they would do a video a day. That was the concept. So one video per day. They would go out, the two of them, to experience something in the world. They would like go to some sort of martial arts, or they would go to art, or they would go to like, you know, whatever, just anything out in the world, something farm related, whatever, be anything. And they would just have this amazing creativity and ideas of what they could try to do for fun, or to learn something about themselves and the world. So it was actually a really, really cool concept. And then Corona happened. So then they were super limited. Then they were basically the two of them doing wacky stuff inside. That was like some really fucked up shit that they were doing.
That's
But
cool.
basically, the concept of the channel is I find really interesting because it's like this contrast to basically what every YouTube channel tries to be, right? Which is about growth and just getting bigger and bigger and having the videos be something people come back to and enjoy. And this was, you know, kind of art, right? That you just say, we have a year and then everything is gone, so enjoy it while it lasts. And this is finite compared to everything online, which is infinite. And supposedly they're going to try, because this has always been the speculation and the worry for people, right? Is that, well, people can just download the videos and re-upload them. But they've said that they're going to strike down on that really hard. So if they find re-uploads, they're going to get taken down. They don't want the videos to exist.
Yeah, I watched a little bit of one.
Public. So,
but yeah, that I think I misspoke earlier. I said that the channel itself had 1.8 million. It was actually 4.5 million subs, but the viewing of it live was 1.5, which that's absurd. So one of the quotes from it is, "I firmly believe that the entirety of what something is cannot be truly appreciated until it ends." So that's kind of the idea behind it. He said, Markiplier said he felt really satisfied. That was the word he used a lot, about something that he was proud of that actually just ends instead of it just, you know, which I can understand to a degree as well, because it's just this constant thing, right? For us as personalities, hate that word. But yeah, that's a really cool idea. I didn't get to watch any. I'd never even heard of it until this happened, which makes me a little bit sad.
Had you heard of Markiplier before?
So I learned who Markiplier was on this podcast because I looked like a goddamn idiot one of the times, and you don't remember. Thank you for not remembering, Cinderin.
Wait, wasn't that Jacksepticeye?
No, that was another time. I didn't hear of it.
Oh, so you didn't know either.
Right. Markiplier was like maybe 6 months.
Some guy called
ago.
Markiplier had a channel.
Yeah.
Called Unus Annus.
I actually, okay, so in terms of my YouTube content that I watch, it's literally just ASMR. It's just women whispering in my ear and eating my ear to the point that Nikki is disturbed and will tell me that
might
she's
actually
disgusted
like Markiplier's ASMR then.
Wait, he has ASMR?
I don't think so, but he does make some. He does whisper into the mic sometimes and make weird sounds, so it might be for you.
He has a very nice voice, I will admit. Okay, so the last topic of the day, I want you to tell everybody what it says on the outline, please.
Why is the last topic of the day cow farts?
Cow farts. That's what we're going to talk about. That's where we're going to end the episode. I made sure this was for a sponsored episode, by the way. So I learned this like yesterday. Apparently, it is a complete myth. I don't know if this is going to make me sound like an idiot. I feel like this was like what everybody thinks. Apparently, global warming is not caused in any way by cow farts. In fact, methane does not even come from their farts at all. It comes from their belching. I feel like I'm living in an alternate dimension, Cinder, and how is this not real?
I mean, whether it's them farting, belching, or existing that contributes is kind of irrelevant, right? It's about the net sum in the end, right? I guess it's sold better with farts. Don't know.
It's funnier. It's I mean, it ruined the whole thing for me. I'm not gonna lie. All right, so to be fair, the belching apparently does contribute to global warming, but it's on a much smaller scale than I had been told, I guess. And it's not from them farting, which is really disappointing to me. It doesn't make it funny anymore.
You're so disappointed now. You're not gonna eat beef anymore.
I'm so. I'll eat more beef. Misled. What do you mean? Gonna eat way more beef now because they don't fart in. Very saddening. It just ruins my whole perception of the whole thing, you know. So that is
if you can't see cow farts where you live, you might be able to if you get ExpressVPN, because it might not be something in your country. I mean, we've been misled, so need to make sure. I would imagine in some countries that might be blocked content because farts are vulgar. So definitely, they've definitely got your back.
I feel like there's probably only like a handful of countries where that's actually a thing, but I know that definitely exists. Toilet humor it's okay, you know. Everybody finds it funny, and those that don't are
Debatable.
lying. No, those that don't are ashamed that they find it funny and lie to themselves. That is genuinely what I think. I'm not even kidding. That's what I think. And Nikki's one of them, by the way. She can't stand it, but I know she finds it funny. She refuses to admit it. Okay, so with that, cow farting off the Mind Center, we have a couple Patreon mailbag questions.
Yep.
The first is from Twice as Mad Tom, who asks, do you guys think that the broadcasting style of Dota esports is good in comparison to CSGO, L Omega Lol L, Valorant Omega Lol rant question mark? What is how does that add to the question at all in terms of seriousness / energy, etc., or not necessarily in comparison to anything, just in general? So I have noticed, and you can piggyback off this.
Mm-hmm.
There is a major difference between FPS games. I'm just gonna say CS and Valorant because it's kind of the same.
Right.
CS Valorant casting versus Dota. Dota, you in almost all cases have a play-by-play and an analyst. And in these games, for the most part, there's some anomalies. You will have two play-by-plays that both kind of do a little bit of analysis in between. They kind of like one guy will do some do play-by-play, and then in the middle, he'll just, based on the sound of his voice, like going down or whatever, it'll be, it'll signal the other guy to start doing the rest of the round or whatever. So I found that very interesting because I don't know if I can even do that. That seems really hard to just go back and forth. You have to have pretty good chemistry. It's definitely not what I'm used to.
I think the nature of the game makes that style more appealing to do, right? So in CSGO, when you think about it, the rounds are short, and then there's like a little bit of a buy time, and then they go again. So your time to do actual analysis is probably too short most of the time. You can get in like a quick point about something cool they did, but then you're moving on, then people are shooting each other again. In Dota, you have a big team fight, and then people are dead for a minute, then they get out of Fountain, they go somewhere, and they don't necessarily fight. So it's way easier to get in longer analysis segments, and the complexity of what is happening in the fights also leaves more to break down. I think analysis in CSGO kind of requires visual aid, where in order to appreciate a good strategic execute on a bomb site, you kind of need to be able to see it top down from a different camera perspective, where you get to see the players positioning, how they move in, formation, utility usage, stuff that you can't really do live very easily, but it's really good for a breakdown afterwards. So that's what CSGO does, and I think it just makes total sense. As far as the casting style, I think you would find if you cast CSGO that stuff like that probably gets pretty natural at some point, actually, where we're just used to doing it our way, but in CSGO, I think there's just a natural flow to the rounds a lot of the time where somebody gets killed, there's movement, and then it's just natural. Like you've kind of quote unquote made your point, and then the other guy will start talking about something, just like we do in Dota. Teamfight is over, play-by-play guy talks less, and analyst talks more. In CSGO, it's just between kills or movements, stuff like that.
So something that I'll add on to that is, and we've talked about this in the past a little bit, that I really dislike the idea of even just a video game in general, casting style being pigeonholed a certain way. Like, this is the correct way, this is the wrong way. I don't like that at all. It's not binary at all. Dota obviously has a very general, I guess you can make it a bit of a blanketing statement that it's a play-by-play and an analyst, but of course there's a lot of kind of in between that you can have based on the combinations. And I think the same actually works for Counter-Strike, and I know this because even though I only cast for a couple days, I did this with Xeno, where I'm play-by-play, he's analyst, and even like people that are way up there in terms of skill level and casting, there's a guy named Sean Garris and DDK who have done some in the past as well, where it's actually Dota style. And I, as an observer, just watching it, I know this because I'm from Dota, but I found that way more interesting because you have somebody that is just paying attention only to the analysis of what's going on. And I disagree with you a little bit. I mean, I agree with most of what you said, but it's not as...
You think there's enough time? to analyze.
Depending on the round, there's definitely
Okay.
enough time to kind of have a
Mhm.
little bit of a back and forth. Like you're just thinking of like the end of the round, what happened. You have to sum it up. There's also lots of like downtime because it's in a round of Counter Strike or Valorant. It's not like people are just bum rushing every fucking way, right?
Right,
You have
right.
people
Mhm.
setting up using utility, and this is plenty of time for the analyst to give their opinions about stuff. So I think that
Mhm.
Dota could even go down like take a page out of CS and vice versa. CS can take a page out of Dota as well. But one thing I will say is, and I don't know if you agree with this, I think Counter Strike casting, Valorant maybe not as much, but definitely Counter Strike is can be considered a little bit more casual friendly, not from a viewer perspective, but from a casting perspective. Whereas Dota feels a little bit more stringent. Would you agree with that?
How do you mean casual from a casting perspective?
Like
That
they
they
can
can be
joke
more
around a
relaxed?
little bit more.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay.
it feels more just casual. Like not saying they're not
Um.
saying it. Like they're definitely giving great analysis. They're really good at that, but it feels more casual as opposed to Dota. It's just again, it's like this cookie cutter thing that everybody's trying to copy each other, just play by play
I
analysis.
mean, I would say from my experience, and something that I really love when we cast together is that we just sometimes we just shoot the shit, right? And that's
Yeah,
also what it's what we get a lot of positive feedback on, and some negative because it's not for everyone, right? But when we cast, we very willingly just get into having fun with something, especially if there's nothing happening in the game. Just joking about something else, maybe talking about something that's nothing to do with the game, even just
like cow farts.
uh, for example. So um, I think the number one most important thing in broadcasting is entertainment. It should be fun, and it should be fun for the people doing it, and it should be fun for the audience. And a lot of the time, those things overlap really well. Where if we're having fun, it rubs off on a big part of the audience. Where if we're having a good time, it just feels like a good environment. You know, you're with your mates watching a game and having a laugh. And a lot of the times, I would say Dota casting is a little bit, like you said, a little bit too pigeonholed, maybe, where the casting will be a little bit too black and white, play by play, expert, not much like banter or synergy, if you will. And it makes it feel less like it's two people casting together, but that it's two individuals casting, right?
Yeah,
Instead of like a unity that's doing it. So I definitely agree that Dota doesn't do as good of a job at that as CS. I think part of it maybe could have something to do with, first of all, like you said, the general casting style. Maybe also just their talent pool, how long they've worked together, that set amount of people. I don't know if we can say the same for Dota. Um, Probably at least some of us can. Um,
yeah. I mean, CS:GO
but yeah,
came after Dota too, right? But obviously, they would have played Source or 1.6
yeah,
before
they're
that anyway.
it's also, I think it also has something to do with the just raw magnitude of events, or not magnitude, the raw amount. Like CS:GO has had so many events that these guys have cast, where Dota has been a little bit more varying. We had one year with a lot of games or a lot of events, and then we've had other years with less events.
Right.
So like any skill, the more you use it, the better you get, right? And especially when you're in a team environment, like casting also is. If you're teams of two, three, four that work together, um, you know, you get more experience. Now, to kind of conclude on the question, he asked if we think the style is good in Dota compared to the other games. Uh, I think so. I think, honestly, I think I haven't watched any Valorant casting, but I think both Dota, CS, and League do a good job. Um, to me, League leans more
Too
toward
serious.
American sports broadcasts.
Yeah, I don't like it.
It seems very heavily inspired. I'm a big fan that of broadcasting that recognizes the game as a game. That does not mean we don't care and uh, we diminish and pretend that it's not important. But it means that we understand that it's a video game, and video games are about having fun and relaxing and being a release rather than being super serious. And I think sports broadcasts do a good job with that. Sometimes they will do like fluff segments, but the broadcasting is generally relatively serious.
Depends on the
I think
network, but yeah, agreed.
Yeah, it depends on the network. I think possibly a reason for that is that people have this like really strong attachment with their team. So if you're just joking around, they feel like it's disrespectful. But I think in esports, it's a bit different where, yeah, you have this connection with your team, but it's kind of hard to explain exactly why. But I think by nature, video game broadcasting should be more casual than regular sports
Yeah,
broadcasting.
I don't want to get off on a
Um,
huge tangent,
so
but you know, obviously everybody that's watched us knows that we agree with each other on this big time. But I will say it's probably easier from a tournament organizer perspective to keep things very stale and
mm,
professional because the chemistry is less important if you're dictating literally everything that's done. I mean, an
yeah.
NBA example that we will finish up on here is there's the channel that we've talked about before, TNT, with Charles Barkley and the other guys, that is considered by far the best channel to watch basketball because they're goofy, they're hilarious. It's the best panel in literally all of sports in the entire world, in my opinion. And then,
Hmm.
for whatever reason, the NBA has signed a contract to give ESPN/ABC the rights to the finals. So every year, you go from this amazing channel, TNT, to ABC, where they. It's funny because it used to be very like stale and just typical professional sports. And now they're
Hmm.
trying to mimic what TNT does, and it's fucking garbage. It's absolute garbage because they don't have the right people. Like you have to get the right
Right.
mix for it to work, right? So that's
Hmm.
I can understand that perspective of it being harder from the tournament organizer. But I think from like a viewer perspective, I'm very biased, but I prefer the more casual side. Anywho, second question, Cinderin.
Yes.
Let's see. From the Maverick 427, greetings, Suns fan and Cinderin. Have either of you ever visited South Africa or want to? What do you think it would take for regions like South Africa and Australia, which are geographically isolated from the gaming world, to actually develop a real competitive Dota 2 gaming scene? Bit of a loaded question because I'm not going to pretend to be an expert. I've never been to South Africa
Me neither.
myself.
But I would definitely like to go sometime. I mean, now is not the time, right? But
Right now,
um, I love visiting different parts of the world. I've always found it fascinating when even with Dota events, we don't really get to see the culture that much, but the bit that we get exposed to, I find it really like um, I like learning about other cultures because I feel like it gives you a more or how to say well-rounded worldview, right? Where we have our opinions about this is just how things are, but it never is, right? It's just how things are where you live and what you take for granted and what you think, and it gives you like a broader perspective of understanding why other people think the way that they do and how their lives are and what things they aspire for, or uh, I mean, just something as banal, if you will, as just seeing the city, like how things are, the language. I'm a huge language guy, right? So love seeing other languages, hearing them spoken, stuff like that. So I'm a big fan of going new places, and I would love to go to South Africa sometime. As far as
well,
the Dota part,
sorry, before I
yeah.
feel like I should expand on that before you get to the other part of the question
Hmm.
because I totally agree. I think and this I'm not trying to make this political, but it's going to sound a little bit political. I think one of the issues with the U.S. in general is two things. Number one, this should be a world thing. History, I think, is
Hmm.
literally the most important subject ever to instill in everybody. I think history repeats itself in many ways, but the thing that Americans miss, which I've been very fortunate, like early growing up, is being in many countries. Traveling is so amazing. Not the
Hmm.
actual traveling. Traveling is fucking awful. Let me rephrase that. Visiting
Traveling is amazing.
once
Traveling is
you're
awful.
once you're in the location, if teleportation was a thing, my god, I would be in a different country every day. But just learning
Hmm.
about other cultures, it helps perspectives a lot, right? Because
Yeah.
everybody grows up in different situations, whether you're poor, you're rich, different country, whatever. It's I think it's just really important to, see that side of things, which again, not trying to be political, but I think Americans have issues with that. But
I think
go ahead.
I think the reason you would feel like Americans have issues with that, and which I think is true, it's not like we're not going to pretend every state is the same because they aren't, right? There's like
Right.
big
It's like
differences
every
between the
country.
states.
Yeah,
But
basically.
if you go on a holiday, let's say you're Danish and you go on a holiday, maybe you will go to Spain or Greece, or maybe you'll go to the US, right? But let's just say you stay within your like region. So we keep it like let's say it's more of a comparison then. So an American traveling from, let's say you go from Washington to uh, California or whatever, or that's maybe a bad comparison because they're kind of similar. Let's say you go from northwest to the south and visit there. There's definitely going to be huge differences, but it's still the U.S., right? There's still a lot of similarities too, where going from one country in Western Europe to one country in Eastern Europe or Southern Europe, there's going to be some similarities and some pretty major differences. Like just something as simple as culture and language will be very different from going from one state to the next. That's not to say, once again, that the states are very similar, because we've talked about this at another time as well, that governing the US has to be so hard because of how different the states are. You're kind of simulating that it's one unit when you can't really make it one because of how different they are. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, that's
but
true.
but the similarities are there, and they're kind of mainly carried out through language, I would say. So my point is, if you're a European visiting other European countries, I think the perspective and the differences that you see are bigger than if you're an American visiting other states. And at the end of the day, you only see the American perspective. So that's why I think something like the internet and people getting more access to traveling across the world is going to help Americans get a different perspective, like more a more different perspective than usual compared to Europeans, where I think it's made of at lesser of a difference
All right,
with
let me just
traveling.
ask you a question. This is very, this is
Mhm.
not a scientific thing, but
Right.
based on my experiences, how many of your friends growing up, let's say you have your 5
Mhm.
closest friends, have left the
Okay.
country that you live in,
I think
Denmark?
all of them.
Okay, so
Yeah.
very normal. This is Arizona, so it's not like we're in the deep south. It's now a blue state, by the way.
Mhm.
Uh, I think every single one of my friends, like close friends, except one, had not been out of the country. One of them went to Mexico, which is like a 2-hour drive. So that
Right.
is, in my experience, based on the people I've been around, that's very normal to never leave the country, and it's sad. I think that's really bad. I think it's definitely underrated. But anyway, back to the question itself, Cinderin.
Mhm.
So I don't know much about South Africa. I know Australia had a lot of issues with internet infrastructure. I don't know if any of
Yeah.
that has changed. I know internet's getting better slowly but surely. But so the problem with
Haha.
Dota is, I mean, Dota is a different, like a different subject entirely. I feel like we should talk
Did
about
I
this
even
some
record? I
point.
did
But
fucking record. That's
Mhm.
Dota is dead in NA, for God's sake. So it's not going to be alive anywhere else either.
that's crazy.
It's basically just Europe and China are the 2 locations for Dota right now. I guess South
South
America.
America is big too, I would say.
Yeah. And
And I
SE.
mean,
Okay. Literally everywhere
honestly,
but NA. Okay.